Hello, welcome. You are listening to Dr. Sushma Singh. Today in Unit 13, Agrarian Classes and Categories, we are going to start our lecture with topic Agrarian Social Structure and Change in India. As mentioned above, agrarian class structure in a given society evolves over a long period of time. It is shaped historically by different socio-economic and political factors. These historical factors vary from region to region. Thus, though one can use the concept of class to make sense of agrarian structures in different contexts, one must also take the specific context into account while doing so. As mentioned above, the traditional Indian rural communities and the agrarian social structures were organized within the framework of Jajmani system. This was peculiarly Indian phenomena. The different caste groups in the traditional Indian village were divided between Jajmani and Kamins. The Jajmans were those caste group who owned and cultivated lands. The Kamins provided different kinds of services to the Jajmans, while the Kamins were obliged to work for the Jajmans. The latter were required to pay a share from the farm produce to their Kamins. The relationship was based on a system of reciprocal exchange. However, participation in this system of reciprocal exchange was not on an equal footing. Those who belonged to the upper caste and owned land were obviously more powerful than those who came from the menial caste groups. The structure of agrarian relations organized within the framework of Jajmani system reinforced the inequalities of the caste system. The caste system in turn provided legitimacy to the unequal land relations. Within this general framework, the actual structures of agrarian relations differed from region to region. While in some part of the subcontinent the influence of Brahminical ritualism was stronger, in some other regions the peasant values were stronger. This had a direct influence on the relative position of Brahmins and landowning caste in the given agrarian setting. Over the years, the Jajmani system has disintegrated and rural society has experienced profound changes in its social structure. The agrarian class structure has also changed. These changes have been produced by a large number of factors. Now let us move to the next point, agrarian changes during the colonial rule. The agrarian policy of the British colonial rulers are regarded as among the most important factors responsible for introducing changes in the agrarian sector structure of the subcontinent. In order to maximize their revenues from the land, they introduced some basic changes in the property relations in the Indian countryside. These agrarian policies of the colonial rulers had far-reaching consequences. In Bengal, Bihar, and in parts of Madras and the United Province, they conferred full ownership rights over the erstwhile zamindars, who were only tax-collecting intermediaries during the earlier regime. The vast majority of peasants who had been actually cultivating land became tenants in the new landlords. Similarly, they demanded revenues in the form of the fixed amount of cash rather than a share from what was produced on the land. Even when bad weather destroyed the crop, the peasants were forced to pay the land revenue. These changes led to serious indebtedness among the peasantry. The poorer among them were forced to mortgage their land in order to meet the revenue demands. In the long run, it led to peasants losing their land to moneylenders and big landowners. The big landowners and moneylenders emerged as a dominant class in the countryside while the ordinary peasant suffered. In the new agrarian class structure that emerged during the colonial rule, peasants had no motivation for working hard to improve their lands. As a result, the agricultural production declined. The colonial rulers also enforced changes in the cropping pattern and made the local peasant produce cash crops like cotton rather than food grain, as they needed cotton for textile mills in England. All this led to frequent famines and general misery of the peasantry. The big landowners gained at the cost of the small and the poor peasants. Now let us move to the next point: agrarian changes after independence. The nationalist leadership during the struggle for freedom for colonial rule had mobilized peasantry on the promise of a better life. Leaders of the Indian National Congress has started talking about the urgent need of agrarian reforms even before they took over the reign of power from the colonial rulers in 1947. The process of land reforms was initiated almost immediately after the independence. The central government directed the state governments to pass legislation that would abolish intermediary landlords, the zamindars, and would grant ownership rights to the actual tillers of the land. Some legislatures were intended to grant security to the tenants. The states also fixed an upper ceiling on the holding size of the land that a single household could possess. The surplus land was to be surrendered to the state and was to be redistributed among those who had no land. However, though the legislation were passed by all the states, only in some parts of the country the desired effect could be achieved. The evaluative studies of the land reforms have often pointed out that only in those parts of the country where peasants were politically mobilized and the local state government had the right kind of political will, the land reforms could be effectively implemented. Similarly, some legislations, such as those on zamindari abolition, was much more successful than those on the ceiling. The government of Free India also initiated several other developmental programs intended to encourage the cultivators to increase productivity of their lands. These included the Community Development Program (CDP), the Cooperative, and the Green Revolution technology. These programs were designed to introduce modern method of cultivation in the Indian countryside. The cultivating farmers were provided with new technology, seeds, and fertilizers at subsidized rates. The state agencies also provided them cheap credit. Though in principle these schemes were meant for everybody, studies carried out in different parts of the world tend to reveal that the benefits of the state support to the agriculture was not equally shared by all the sections of the rural society. Most of the benefits went to those who were already rich and powerful. However, despite this bias, these initiatives have been able to bring about a significant change in the agrarian economy, at least in some parts of the country. This is particularly true about the region like Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, coastal Andhra, and parts of the Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. Apart from increasing productivity of land, These changes have transformed the social framework of Indian agriculture. Agriculture is most parts of India is now carried out on commercial lines. The old structure of Jajmani relations has more or less completely disintegrated, giving way to more formalized arrangement among the land owning cultivators and those who work for them. Some scholars have argued that these changes indicate that capitalist form of production is developing in agriculture and a new class structure is emerging in the Indian countryside. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.